everyone, it is Will from the St. Johns County Public Library System, and we're here today to make boiled peanuts. It's one of my favorite recipes. I've loved boiled peanuts since as long as I can remember, and I wanted to share that with y'all in case you were wondering how to make them. It's super simple as long as we have time. But before we get into the recipe, I wanted to introduce you to someone who's responsible for making the peanut a pretty significant agricultural crop for the South. And the man who is largely responsible for making the peanut a pretty agricultural staple, economically wise, for the South is this man right here, George Washington Carver. We don't really know when he was born. All we know is sometime before the end of slavery in 1865, and he did die in 1943. Now, because his mother was kidnapped by raiders, and I'm not quite sure what happened to his father. I don't know if there's a record of that or not. George Washington Carver ended up being raised by the white family that were originally his owners. And they did something kind of interesting for the time period. They allowed him to get a pretty extensive education. And if that sounds horrible, it's because it is. During this time period, unfortunately, the reality is there were severe limitations on the types of education, if any, Black children could receive. So, for instance, if a child was a child of a sharecropper family who was Black, it was not uncommon for the white landowner to go into that school and yank the child out after a certain age in order to help the father back on the plot of land in order to create more crops for the white farmer to make money off of. So there were all kinds of barriers to education for non-white children in the late 19th century into the 20th century. So George Washington Carver stands out for several reasons. He ended up getting a Master's of Science, which is an accomplishment for anybody, especially at that time, but especially so for non-white kids. With that degree, he really wanted to focus on poor farmers and the struggles that they faced. Alabama especially, but other southern states as well, heavily invested into cotton as their cash crop. Now, cotton takes a lot of nutrients out of the soil. So if you keep planting it year after year after year, you get less and less cotton crop for what you planted, meaning your money, your income goes down. And cotton had been planted in Alabama and other, southern states for generations at this point. So the soil was pretty much tapped out. And you can't eat cotton. Yes, we use it for clothing and other forms of fabric, but these sharecroppers, these poor, farmers that are having to plant more and more of this crop is eating into the area that they would use for supplemental farming to supplement their diet. So this is where peanuts come in. Peanuts put nutrients back in the soil, especially things like nitrogen, and they're relatively healthy to eat if you use them correctly. So this is not only can these poor farmers use them to put nutrients back in the soil, they can eat them to supplement their diets, to make them healthier. And places like Alabama very quickly realized that they could actually profit off of peanuts as well and make them into a secondary cash crop. So it worked out for everyone, more or less. George Washington Carver actively went around to different farming locations, showed them why rotation of crops is such an important thing. It makes them more money in the long run. It helps them out economically, helps their diets. He ended up working at Tuskegee University in Alabama for 47 years, and that's a long career for anybody. So he ended up being relatively famous later in his life, especially for his work in agriculture. And one of the things he did, he created, I think, 140 different recipes for the peanut. He also advocated for planting of sweet potatoes and other crops like that. So again, he didn't create the peanut, but he helped poor Southern farmers and the Southern economy realize, hey, these are important to the health of our fields, and here's all the different things that we can do with the peanut and other crops like it. And that's a very, very short, condensed history of George Washington Carver and his legacy. I encourage you to do more research on him. He's a pretty cool dude who did a lot in agricultural economy for the South. So with all that being said, meet me in my kitchen and we'll go over how to make boiled peanuts. So today we're going to do boiled peanuts. If you're not from the South, you either have yet to encounter them because you're not quite sure what they are, or you don't like them at all. There seems to be no in between. It is definitely something that I've never seen outside the South. It's other people, excuse me, there is a spider on my counter. And for those of you who know me, this is not my optimal moment. Give me just a second. Okay, so now that's taken care of. I don't like spiders. I know they have a purpose, but whew. Anyway, so boiled peanuts aren't something that is largely found outside the South, kind of like trying to find fried okra anywhere. It's definitely regional, but you want to make sure you get the right type of peanuts if you're going to, attempt this. Don't get the Spanish peanuts, the red ones. Those are good for roasting. You can't just go to the peanut aisle and get canned peanuts. Those are already cooked, they're roasted. You want to get what is called green peanuts, and you generally buy them in bulk. Publix sometimes already puts them in little styrofoam canisters for you, which is great, but I like mine in bulk because then I get to just show as many as I want in this bag. And they look like a peanut. They're going to have a shell. And the way that the peanut plant works is this is a root item. This is found underneath the plant. The plant itself is pretty large. It's green. A lot of them have yellow flowers. Some could have white. So you're never going to see the peanut above ground. You have to pull the whole thing out. And these are attached to the roots. And a good big peanut plant can produce, I think at minimum, like 50 peanuts and up to like several hundred, depending how big it is. So you get a lot of peanuts from one plant. So what we're going to do, first thing you do, especially if you buy them in bulk, but no matter how you buy them, if they're green, even though they've been rinsed, they haven't been rinsed that well. You can feel the sand on them. We have sandy soil here. So you want to make sure you rinse them really well. So we're going to go do that right now, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, as you can see here, I put my peanuts in a big colander. It's the easiest way to do this. And we are just going to run some water over it. And kind of move them around like this, especially if you have a lot. I have a sprayer. You want to make sure you clean them well. I don't think anyone wants any grit in their peanuts. I mean, I've done it by accident before. It's not going to hurt anything, but it just doesn't taste as good. And we're going to do this basically until your hands don't feel gritty anymore, and whatever you're comfortable with. These dark spots right here, you can see it. That's not dirt. It's just what the peanut looks like. So you're just doing by feel to make sure all that grit is off of it. And we'll finish this up, and I'll show you what to do with your pot. So I'm going to let my peanuts finish draining. While I'm waiting for that, you're going to want a decent sized pot, especially if you have a lot of peanuts. And you want to fill it. I know this is dark, but probably 3/4 of a way up. You want to make sure you have enough water to cover your peanuts, but not so much that once you put your peanuts in there, it overflows. So we're going to fill this up real quickly. Alrighty, I'm pretty sure I have enough water. I just kind of eyeball it. You're going to put it on high to get this thing to boil. And what did I do? Oh, some people make Cajun peanuts. I don't like Cajun peanuts. A little too spicy for me, but a lot of things are too spicy for me, so I just salt them. And you're going to salt them to your desired taste. It can be a little bit, it can be a lot of bit, but I always start with salting the water first. Just kind of put like 3 of my little handfuls. You can kind of see, like I've just put right there. Start with 3, sometimes 4, and make sure to taste throughout. A we're just gonna bring this up to a boil, and then we're gonna add our peanuts. Alrighty. So now that the water is finally boiling, we are going to slowly add these peanuts. You do not burn yourself. Get them all in there. Strain her up. Kind of get them down in there. And now you are going to cover them. And you are going to let them sit, like I said, for a few hours. So you want to let your peanuts sit. You can do this quickly in an hour. I don't recommend that. I recommend letting them sit as long as possible to get them done as possible. But everyone has their different tastes when it comes to boiled peanuts. Some like them a little firmer, some like them a little mushier. But again, you're gonna you want to boil them. You might need to turn down the heat closer to simmer. So even though you're gonna let these sit a long time, it's not something you can just sit and walk away. It's not a crock pot. You do have boiling water. There are times you need to add more water if you want to let them simmer. I like to let mine sit for 2 or 3 hours before I even consider eating them. I do test them throughout. I'm going to test things like how much salt I have in there, if it's to my taste, and then the doneness. So like I said, sometimes it can be done quicker than others. It's going to depend on how many peanuts you have in there as well. So even though you can walk away and do some other things, don't walk away too far. You don't want a big boiling mess of water all over the place, especially if you got, little guys running around. You want to make sure that you are at least nearby to keep an eye on the water. And once these are done, we'll come back and I'll show you what the done product looks like. All right, back again. Let us check these peanuts again. Woo. Steam is hot. Like hot. I always try to get big peanuts to check, because the small one's going to cook through pretty quickly. The bigger they are, the longer they take to be the way I like them. This is the worst part, is waiting for it to cool off. And that's it. Things like peanuts and pork shoulder and to a lesser degree collard greens and stuff, they take time to cook. So if you got the time, I definitely suggest trying this. Like I said, it's super easy. The only thing you have to do is wait and just keep an eye on your water. And I'll see you all next time.